Most men think boundaries are something you say. Calm men understand boundaries are something you do. And that one difference is why some men spend years stuck in the same exhausting cycles, arguing, explaining, negotiating, hoping, while other men shut problems down without drama, without yelling, and without losing the relationship. Because a boundary is not a debate. A boundary is not a speech. A boundary is not you trying to convince someone to treat you well. A boundary is a line that protects your peace, your time, and your self-respect. And calm men don't set boundaries by escalating. They set boundaries by reducing access. They don't argue for respect. They move in a way that makes disrespect expensive. In this video, I'm going to show you how calm men set boundaries without arguing, what they say, what they don't say, and how they enforce standards in a way that actually works. Not to control anyone, not to punish, but to protect yourself and build relationships that are clean, respectful, and stable. Why arguing is a losing strategy. Here's the hard truth. The more you argue about basic respect, the less respect you get. Because arguing sends a message you don't intend to send. It says, I need you to agree before I can stand on my standards. If I explain it better, you'll finally treat me right. Your approval is required for my self-respect. And once you step into that energy, the relationship becomes a courtroom. You become the lawyer, she becomes the judge, and your peace becomes the price of admission. A calm man doesn't enter that room. He understands something most men learn too late. If someone repeatedly crosses your line, the problem isn't confusion. The problem is access. Access is what makes people careless. When they know you'll stay no matter what, they take more liberty. When they know you'll explain yourself 10 times, they push 10 times. When they know you'll still show up after disrespect, they keep the disrespect. Not always because they're evil, sometimes because they're emotional, sometimes because they're immature, sometimes because they're used to men folding. But the cause doesn't matter. Calm men don't focus on diagnosing. They focus on responding. And their response is simple. Nothing personal. But this doesn't work for me. No anger, no lecture, no revenge, just a clean boundary and a clean consequence. What a boundary actually is. Let's define a boundary the right way. A boundary is not a request. A request is, please don't do that. A boundary is, if that happens again, this is what I will do. Notice the difference. A request tries to change them. A boundary changes you. A request is emotional. A boundary is structural. A request is negotiation. A boundary is clarity, and a calm man always builds boundaries around three things. 1, his time. 2, his attention. 3, his presence, because those are your real currencies, not your words, not your explanations, not your anger. Time, attention, presence. You can talk for hours and still be disrespected, but when you remove time, attention, and presence, the dynamic shifts immediately. That's why boundaries work best when they're short and enforced. Here's the formula. State the standard. State what happens next. Then stop talking. That's it. Most men fail at boundaries because they do the first two. Then they ruin it with a paragraph. Calm men don't add paragraphs. They let reality do the teaching. The calm man's rule, don't negotiate your standards. A standard is not something you defend. A standard is something you live. If you have to argue your standard, it's not a standard anymore. It's a preference you're begging to be respected. And here's the thing. When you start arguing, you stop looking like a man with standards and you start looking like a man seeking approval. Calm men never do that. They understand. Respect that has to be negotiated isn't respect. Consistency that has to be begged for isn't consistency. Loyalty that requires surveillance isn't loyalty. So they don't argue. They observe, then they decide. And if the behavior doesn't match what they want in their life, they don't fight about it. They simply stop participating. This is where a lot of men get it twisted. They think calm boundaries are passive. No, calm boundaries are not passive. Calm boundaries are controlled. A calm man can be firm without being loud. He doesn't need the volume of emotion to feel powerful. He has the quiet confidence of someone who knows he can walk away. Why calm works. Psychology without the buzzwords. Let me explain why calm boundaries hit harder than angry ones. Anger is noisy. Anger tells the other person you're reactive. And when someone learns you're reactive, they also learn they can control you. They can push a button and watch you spin. Calmness does the opposite. Calmness says, I'm not here to win a fight. I'm here to protect my peace. And psychologically, that's unnerving to someone who's used to conflict controlling the room. When you stay calm, you don't reward bad behavior with attention. You don't turn disrespect into a performance. You don't give them the satisfaction of your emotional chaos. You make it boring. And when disrespect becomes boring, it loses power. That's why calm men don't argue. They don't feed the fire, they starve it. The 5 situations where men leak respect and the calm response. Now, let's get practical. I'm going to give you 5 common situations where men lose respect because they over-explain, over-chase, overreact, and the calm response that stops it without drama. Situation 1. The hot and cold pattern. This is when she's warm one day, distant the next. She disappears, comes back. Disappears, comes back. Most men respond with panic. They text more, they ask what's wrong, they try to fix it with more effort. That's the mistake. Hot and cold behavior feeds on your pursuit. The calm response is simple. You don't chase inconsistency, you match energy. If she pulls away, you don't punish, you don't insult, you don't post quotes online, you just reduce access. What you say seems like your energy is different lately. No worries. When you're free and consistent, let me know. Then you go quiet. Notice what you didn't do. You didn't accuse her, you didn't beg, you didn't interrogate, you didn't demand reassurance, you left the door open, but you stopped leaning through it. That's calm power. Situation 2. Disrespect disguised as jokes. Some women test with little comments. They'll mock you, they'll belittle you, they'll take shots and call it humor. A lot of men either laugh it off and feel resentment later, or they explode and start a fight. Calm men do neither. They address it once, cleanly. What you say, don't speak to me like that. Then stop talking. If she says, I was joking, you don't argue about the joke. You say, I'm not joking. Then you change the topic or end the interaction. And if it happens again, you don't repeat the boundary. You enforce it by removing access. That might mean ending the date early. That might mean leaving the room. That might mean being less available next time. Because the consequence teaches what the conversation can't. Situation 3. Last-minute cancellations. Life happens, emergencies happen, but repeated last-minute cancellations show lack of respect for your time. Most men respond with either, it's okay, don't worry, while they feel disrespected, or a long emotional message about how it hurts. Calm men respond with standards. First time, no worries, hope everything's okay. Second time, all good, let's plan when you're sure you can make it. Third time, no problem, I'll leave scheduling to you. Reach out when you're ready to lock something in, and then you stop initiating plans. No anger, no lecture, you simply stop placing your time in unreliable hands. Situation 4. She escalates conflict to get a reaction. Some people argue to win, some people argue to release emotion, some people argue because it's how they feel closeness. A calm man doesn't reward that. If she raises her voice, repeats herself, interrupts, or tries to bait you into defending yourself, you do this. Lower your voice, slow your words, what you say. I'm not doing this like that. We can talk when it's calm. If she keeps going, you end it. I'll talk later. Have a good night. Then you disengage, not as revenge, as leadership. Because you're teaching the relationship the standard, I don't connect through chaos. Situation 5. Comparison games and pressure. This is when she says things like, my ex would have done this. Other men don't act like this. If you cared, you'd prove it. Most men get defensive. They start listing everything they do. They start competing with a ghost. Calm men don't compete. They clarify once. What you say, I'm not competing with anyone. If you want me, it's because you respect how I move. If you want something else, choose that. Then silence. No argument. You don't chase someone who's trying to manipulate you into performance. The calm boundary script template. Use this. Here's a template you can use in almost every situation. Keep it short. 1. Name the behavior. 2. Name your standard. 3. Name your action. Example, when you cancel last minute repeatedly, it tells me my time isn't respected. I'm not available for that, so I'm going to step back from planning. Another, when you speak to me with disrespect, it shuts me down. I don't do disrespect. If it happens again, I'm leaving. Another, when communication disappears for days without explanation, I lose interest. I want consistency. If you can't do that, it's not a fit. The key is the last part, your action, because boundaries without action are just speeches, and speeches are what men give when they're afraid to enforce. The biggest mistake, over-explaining. Let's talk about the number 1 boundary killer, over-explaining. Most men think, if I say it perfectly, she'll understand. But you're not dealing with logic, you're dealing with incentives. If the behavior continues after you explained it once, Explanation isn't the problem. Your enforcement is. Calm men use a rule. Say it once. Enforce it once. Let the pattern reveal itself. Because the pattern is always the truth, not the apology, not the tears, not the promises, the pattern. A calm man doesn't get hypnotized by words, he watches behavior. Boundaries aren't ultimatums, and how to do this without becoming toxic. Now, important. Some men hear consequences and think it means threats. It doesn't. A threat is, do what I want or else. A boundary is, I'm not available for this dynamic. See the difference? A threat tries to control them. A boundary controls you. A calm man does not force anyone to stay. He does not coerce. He does not punish. He simply refuses to build a life with someone who brings chaos, disrespect, or instability. That's not manipulation. That's selection. You're allowed to choose. And this is why calm boundaries are so powerful. They're clean. They don't require cruelty. They don't require insults. They don't require games, just clarity and consistency. How to enforce without drama, the enforcement ladder. If you want to be calm, you need a system. Here's a simple enforcement ladder that prevents overreaction. Level 1, pause. You stop responding immediately. You give yourself space. Level 2, clarify once a short boundary. 1 sentence. Level 3, reduce access. Less time, less attention, less availability. Level 4, remove yourself. End the call, leave the date, go home. Level 5, exit the relationship if the pattern stays. Most men skip levels and explode. Calm men don't explode. They escalate consequences slowly, cleanly, and predictably. That predictability creates safety because the other person learns this man is steady. He isn't dramatic, but he also isn't available for nonsense. That combination is rare, and it's attractive. What this looks like in a real conversation. Let's run through a few real examples. Example A, she's disrespectful during an argument. She says, "You're such a joke. You never get it." Most men, "How am I a joke? What do you mean?" Explain. Calm man, "I'm going to stop you right there. Don't speak to me like that." She says, "Oh my God, you're so sensitive." Calm man, "No, I'm serious." Then he goes quiet. If it continues, "I'll talk later." Call ends. No yelling, no insults, no back and forth. He removed access to his presence the moment disrespect showed up. Example B, she cancels last minute. Her, "Sorry, I can't make it." Calm man, "No problem. Take care." No why, no again, no guilt trip. Then later, if it becomes a pattern, "I like consistency. I'm going to step back from planning. If you want to set something up when you're sure, let me know." Then he stops asking her out. That's how you enforce without arguing. The calm man's inner game, why you must be able to walk away. Here's the truth nobody wants to face. You can't set boundaries if you're afraid to lose them. If you're terrified she'll leave, you'll tolerate anything. You'll explain yourself twice, then 10 times, then 100 times. You'll trade self-respect for proximity. Calm boundaries require one thing. You have to be willing to lose what disrespects you. Not because you don't care, because you care about your life more. A calm man doesn't cling. He chooses, and that mindset changes everything. Because the moment you stop needing someone to validate you, you stop arguing for basic treatment. You stop negotiating your dignity. You stop chasing closure. You stop begging for consistency from inconsistent people. You become a man with standards that are real, not spoken, proven. What women respect about calm boundaries and what healthy women want. Let's be fair here. Healthy women don't want a man who argues all day. They don't want a man who explodes. They don't want a man who threatens to leave every week. They want stability. They want a man who is emotionally regulated, a man who can hold a line without cruelty, a man who can protect the relationship from chaos, including his own. Calm boundaries create safety because they make you predictable. And in a world full of reactive men, unpredictability is what makes relationships feel unstable. So if you set boundaries calmly, you're not being cold. You're being a man who can lead himself. That's the point. The 6 boundary lines every man should memorize. Write these down. Use them exactly. No extra words. 1, don't speak to me like that. 2, that doesn't work for me. 3, I'm not available for that dynamic. 4, I'll talk when it's calm. 5, I like consistency. If that's not your style, it's not a fit. 6, no hard feelings. I'm going to step back. Notice what's missing. No insults, no lectures, no diagnosing her childhood, just clean lines. And here's the rule. After you say one of these, you stop talking. You let the silence do the work. Because silence is where people feel the consequence. Words can be argued with. Silence can't. The calm man's closing message. So if you take nothing else from this video, take this. Boundaries aren't about controlling anyone. They're about controlling what you allow into your life. Arguing is what you do when you're trying to force an outcome. Calm boundaries are what you do when you're choosing your standards over your anxiety. And the men who win in relationships aren't the loud men. They're the steady men, the men who can love without losing themselves, the men who can stay calm under pressure, the men who can walk away from chaos without hatred, because your life gets better the moment you stop negotiating respect. If this helped you, subscribe. On this channel, we build calm masculinity, self-respect, emotional control, boundaries, and relationship strategy without drama.